you are one of the top leaders, I like to say, in Canada when it comes to blockchains.
This organization called the Alberta Blockchain Consortium. She's like, how can we take this amazing technology and how can we innovate it into the energy industry and how can we create an actual benefit? How do we get to net zero? How do we do all these things?
Politicians and really trying to drive regulation and really also help educate a lot of them so they understand about the space. So can you just share a little bit of like what it is that you're doing at a high level and also like the impact that you're making, because it is a lot.
Honestly, it's a group effort. Like it's people like yourselves, it's people like Bitcoin Bay, it's Land with Web through Toronto. It's all of us being able to come together to build this ecosystem, this industry. I feel like just to kind of highlight some of the work. So we do focus on the space, but kind of like in two buckets. We have the financial services side, and then we also have the energy side. So we have 10 different committees right now. So every time we hear like there's issues in the industry, we have issues with banking, we have issues with regulation, we have issues with policy, we have issues with energy, we have issues with cyber. We actually have these awesome people that come to us and go, hey, do you think we could have a committee on this? Like, how do we start bringing, people together to discuss these solutions? And like, we're not a pay-for-play style of organization, we never have been, so everyone is welcome to come. We have like probably over 100 volunteers all across the country. Like, I've been volunteering, basically, it's like I started, but it's really volunteer-based. We have one amazing staff I love trained to pieces, but we finally brought somebody on like in the last 2 years to help out. So like we have Royal Bank of Canada, with like Scotiabank and CIBC and some others that are supporting us through an access to banking committee. Banking is definitely still a strong consideration for the fact that we have limited access to this financial service. Some of it comes from issues of correspondent banking, some of it comes from issues of regulatory clarity. But being able to bring the banks together to have this conversation of like what is it as an industry that we can do to get better access to this financial service. Another one is insurance. So insurance is a difficult thing for many of us to access. So the consortium has actually done the fundraising and we're in the late stages of getting approval for an association-based captive. So now we're going to be able to supply our members with insurance that ideally is going to be at least 25% below commercial markets. From a regulatory perspective, so Shereen, we work closely with the CSA. They've given us tasks. It's like build us frameworks on stablecoins, build us a repository of what you're seeing globally. A powerhouse team of people with expertise not just in Canada but in global jurisdictions, like dealing in Asia, dealing in Latin America, dealing in the United States, dealing with some of the more Caribbean areas, so we can let the government know here's what we're seeing globally and here's how we could better align. From the cybersecurity, we have the Department of Justice Special Agents, we have RCMP, we have provincial law enforcement, we have groups like Chainalysis, Elliptic, helping build out standards, and that's actually in partnership with the banks. They'd like to see more consistent standards of what's going on, how you do your AML, your KYC. We actually work with Finance Canada, so we sit on their anti-money laundering and terrorist financing committee, and we're actually building some educational programs to help, in status review for Canada for a lot of the virtual asset service providers and CTPs. From a mining perspective, we're actually the only association we're aware of in North America that hosts trades missions. So we've been able to successfully get the Premier of Alberta. He gave us a minister. She mandated one to support our file. He's attended 4 inbound trade missions, 2 outbound trade missions, and thanks to the work that he's doing, we actually just landed Bitcoin, the world's largest net zero, fully integrated Bitcoin mining facility is going to be in a northern part of Alberta, so northern and to the west. So they're doing a whole gigawatt, which is actually going to represent close to 7% of the global hash rate, just like in one transaction. So being able to get that kind of support coming in from government, from a mining perspective, and our mining committee built a roadmap. The Alberta government is taking on that roadmap, integrating it, and then going, how do we look at this not just from a mining side, but a financial services side? So we conduct roundtables with many of the ministers in Alberta, all the regulators in Alberta, to help educate the government and help educate the regulators on what the industry is seeing as what could be a barrier to continuing to bring billions and billions of dollars of investment. And we're taking what we're learning in Alberta, and then we're trying to bring it into other provinces across Canada as well. It's like we're showing billions of dollars of investment, we're showing government-funded roadmaps, we're able to show jobs and economic growth and the benefits that this industry has. So we do advocate on a federal level. We work with pretty much all of the regulators. within Canada. So yeah, there's a lot of different areas that we do to support. A lot of the different committees really support that. Right now, we're actually just stood up a new committee on taxation, because a lot of the smaller accounting firms outside the big four that might not be as familiar with how to properly report on this industry. So we're building basically like a white paper that's going to give them some standards and some really good understanding of how to actually account for this. And we're getting feedback from, the government. It's like, how would you like to see this done? How do we collaborate with, organizations like Finance Canada and the CRA?
Think about it, it's like there's so much stuff that needs to be done for us to push the needle to get to the place where we know crypto blockchain can get to, especially here in Canada, which is a lot of work. But it's like the work that you're doing, especially with the committee, and to see some of the members here, which is amazing. It's really inspiring at the same time. So it's exciting. But I'm curious to know, like, with all the different things you have going on, like, what would you say is like one thing you're really looking forward to?
So my in the space is we are consistently advocating to every member of parliament, senator, bureaucrat that I can get my hands on. We need a federal position. We need a legislative position on this industry within the space. The first legislative position that we need is actually around stablecoins. As we are having difficulty accessing financial services, we need a form of international settlement that can happen cross-border with companies, and stablecoins are that. As we are the only jurisdiction globally right now that's viewing them as a security, we do need the federal government to step in. We need them to help support bringing in the Bank of Canada so we can be regulated in the Retail Payments Act. I do feel that we could have support from the Securities Commission to actually hand that over, provided that it stays regulated. So our first one is we need to get the government to be willing to stand up a working group under Finance Canada. We have support from regulators that we've spoken to, law enforcement, banks, and industry to participate within this working group to help build this legislative framework. Realistically, if I could pick one government that would be most likely to do it, I feel that the Conservatives would probably be more interested, and it's just the fact that having a federal position, I think, would give credibility to this industry, provide better support, provide us better access to banking and other financial services. So yes, let's have this conversation. Let's bring the right parties to the table, and then I really think that we need to repatriate our assets. We have close to $15 billion of our funds are being housed right now outside of our jurisdiction in the United States of America. We have 3 custodians that are regulated in Canada, and we need to bring CERO to the table to ask for a stronger exemptive relief so that these companies can custody more of the assets from the BunkerFis and the Indexes and the Virgos, etc. So I think within that legislative framework, we also need to look at how can we get the right kind of regulatory exemptions for the regulated custodians so that we can bring our money home. Because I do think it's, an issue with consumer protection. We've seen Celsius, we've seen what's happened with FTX, many others, and when your money goes across border, those funds aren't held within Canada, you expose yourself to risk. So we'd like to, advocate to the government to help us de-risk that and bring it back home.
One thing that just keeps you going, despite all the hurdles, despite all the politics that's happening south of the border, it's over.
I started, I was actually pregnant. I was a single mom by the time I was 21. I know, working. But he's actually what inspired me to start my tech company. And then, when I was married and I was going to have another baby, I was like, I don't know what it is about babies, but they just inspire me. So actually that's what got me into crypto. I was like, how do I make sure that my babies are always taken care of? How do I make sure that there's generational wealth available for them?